Okay. Can everyone see that okay? Great, thank you. And as I noted, we really started developing these over the last 2 years. So we're going to talk about some different things, the permanent records. We're going to spend time on financial records, which often do not go to the archives, but for which many meetings have boxes of. Certainly Putney did for a long time because people were worried about what could and could not be gotten rid of. Records such as property related, and then we have permanent records where I think a lot of our questions have been today around the clerk, recorder, business meeting related, and meeting life, those letters, etc. And then we're going to look also, oops, sorry about that. I moved too far. Look at records that can be literally destroyed and maybe should be destroyed. We're going to start with, it's important not to count on members' personal computers for long-term storage of electronic documents. That's a safety question, much like you don't want the paper to be destroyed. If your records are fragmented and over personal computers go away, members go away, it's easy to lose those records. So they should be, the final versions should be moved to secure storage, such as a work Google Drive. And in some cases, associated records that have developed over the time of being a clerk or recording clerk or treasurer should move, those should be captured and moved to that secure drive when that person moves from that role. This is moving. I'm sorry. Wait a minute. I'm going to do this. Okay. And a good time to think about it from a policy, from a meeting point of view, is thinking about having some kind of checklist or something that sort of says, oh, when one clerk steps down, here's some of the things that need to happen. And one of them is making sure that the records have gone to either to the new clerk because it's ongoing work that is going to occur and you don't yet have a final version, or it goes to the meeting storage. And again, this becomes more important in the digital age where it's really ephemera until it's held in a secure storage space. And when transfer occurs, the old clerk should actually remove their copies from their computer. Otherwise, they're sort of floating around as unofficial records. Archivists care about what's the official one. And I think we've said this again, secure cloud-based service, whether it's Google or something else, they should be backed up. And there are multiple ways of doing that. That's really a best practice to have a Google Drive, maybe more than one drive. A Dropbox is another application that can be used. And if you're using external drives, they actually have to be replaced every 3 to 4 years. And there's maintenance involved in that. Another best practice, just to note, it's important to use widely accepted document and image formats such as PDF, JPEG, etc. And not to use something like ODX files or Microsoft product file extensions. Even though they may be widely accepted today, they may not in the future. Okay. File naming conventions. Within your meeting, it's helpful to have a file naming convention so you know what the final document actually is. It's good practice to associate a date with the file and a name that's pretty clear. And this helps in a number of ways. It helps when you're gathering up electronic files to send off to the archives in UMass. It helps within your meeting for people to readily be able to find them. For example, in our meeting, we have links to our website, back to our Google Drive, and having standard naming practices makes that all smoother. It can be rule-based. Okay. I think I've covered all of that. If people have questions, let me know. This is sort of the standard practice for us, and for those indifferent, we have at this time a repository, which is at SCUA. And we do recommend that meetings archive their records here. And for those of you who are just embarking on that in New England, and you have questions, detailed questions about how to do it, and we have, as I've mentioned, an outreach archivist, Tamara Gatos, who's available to consult with your meeting on maybe there are things that you have that we haven't mentioned. It's not clear. She can work with you on that. She also works and interfaces with SCUA to help make sure that for the transfer of electronic documents, and other coordinating with them if you need it. Those instructions, and there are forms that go along with it, that are all available on the New England Yearly Meeting website. As part of a meeting, if you have not yet submitted to SCUA, there is a requirement that you, your meeting create a deed of gift. We have a form for that. It's standard. And that form, again, is available on that website. At each submission with those forms, you as a meeting get to select which records are immediately available for research and which records should be closed for either 20 or 40 years. So those are important as you're looking at your records, what should go to be preserved and ultimately opened up, but will not yet be available for searching by the public. Okay. And then best practice, we're saying no more than every 2 years. Holly, I hear once a year for electronic. I think that's fine. Physically, archives are set up to work kind of in batches. And so getting a batch of about 2 years worth of records is good for them, or larger batches. So for those of you thinking about your digital records and making them available, and you want to submit your records to SCUA in digital form frequently, just be aware they don't serve as a hosting service for your records to be made available to your meeting members. You still have to have something else, such as a Google Drive or a Google Workspace. All right. Okay. And this is just a note of caution. If your meeting's aware of any kind of anticipated government proceedings or private litigation, you may need to hold relevant documents about that matter for longer than we specify in the generalized table. And if you need examples, probably Betsy's a better person to give those than me, but it can happen, and meetings should be thinking about that. Okay, so Any other questions about the generalized? I know that's a lot that's sort of pretty high level around best practices with the permanent records and the digital records. Sarah?
Yeah, this might be farther into the weeds than you want to go right now, but I've been pretty much a stickler for people wanting to use hyperlinks in the documents that go into business meeting minutes. And
Ah,
I for example, I do the permanent board records to go to archives, and I always print the documents that are hyperlinked unless they're, incidental. But I think I keep telling people hyperlinks are not permanent. You
it's a
need
good,
you need to
yeah,
print the document.
yeah, good point. Thank you. Betsy?
Yeah, just partly in response to that, one of the things that the Archives Committee encourages, and some of you are clearly already thinking about this, is to think about the issues of retention and archiving as you're creating documents. So hyperlinks is one example. How much detail you put in the ministry and council minutes is related to, do you normally send your ministry and council minutes to the permanent archives? Who has access to the ministry and council minutes in the next 6 months or 5 years from now on your meetings Google Drive? So, and even the file naming conventions. So if you get your meeting used to thinking about these issues at the front end, then you have an easier time when you actually go to archive them. So just a tip.
Thank you, Betsy. Marion?
Yeah, I have a question about, I keep being told you must use Google Drive and Dropbox and all that kind of thing. And I have been burnt so much in another role in terms of science stuff, of everything being on these disks and they get outdated. And I always want to keep one hard copy just in case. I I don't know that that's going to be a permanent solution. So I'm trying to find out.
I don't think any of us know. I think the policy of having both hard copy and digital in our meeting, we print out minutes, we keep them locally hard copy for a few years. They go to the archives. I don't think we do that with all of the documents that we are now sending electronically, but or that we will be sending electronically. But yes, paper is still the most reliable archive medium there is, seconded probably by microfilm. And but for the convenience of most meetings, many meetings now, we use digital copies to share among friends in the here and now. We no longer print off lots of pieces of paper for our meeting members to read minutes. And so from an archivist point of view, from a long-term storage point of view, you're thinking about both. I would absolutely agree with you, but we do need to think also about the use in the meeting and also the use of researchers. Electronic searching is a whole lot easier than paper searching. Mackie, and then Mary.
I just wanted to say that SCUA migrates any documents they have electronically from platform to platform as they develop. So they'll be available as long as technology allows and technological ingenuity allows. So, in our meeting, we do have things on Google Drive, but we also have them at SCUA. So hopefully that's a good backup.
Mary?
Yes, format migration, I think, is something we can probably rely upon SCUA to do. For my meeting, it looks to me as if we're going to settle on quite a long hold time before our minutes become available, and we're going to need to retain our own copies during that time, I think. Another question I have is we are currently experimenting, and we haven't committed yet, to something developed in Britain called the Quaker Meetings Network. And I'm wondering if friends have any experience or any comments about security and reliability. I don't know if anyone else has looked into this yet.
Good question. All right. I'm gonna move along unless there are more questions. So permanent records from a financial point of view are accounts payable, ledgers, and schedules, audit reports. This is the kind of record. Checks, receipts, and contracts, although they're long-term, but not necessarily things that we see in they're long-term for the meeting. The general ledger, retirement and pension records, and year-end financials. And if you've looked at the old archives policy, most of these categories don't show up. Just saying. Property related, however, are the cemetery. If you have a cemetery, burial records, deeds and titles, maintenance records, and mortgage and bills of sale. So we're gonna. So for cemetery, I think everybody knows what those need to be maintained locally. But the meetings can archive those either as copies or original records at SCUA. That can be of real interest to researchers and genealogists. But we're clear that in the meeting itself, maintaining a cemetery, you need long-term local access to those records. I have to go back a moment and see. Oh no, okay. Again, original copies of deeds and titles for meeting property may be or can be stored, archived with SCUA, or stored in a secured vault with a local copy kept for the reference of the meeting, since the deed itself can be pulled back if needed. And obviously those are truly permanent records. For maintenance of the building and building specifications, we're recommending, based on work done by the committee members, that those things are held locally for at least 7 years following the end of the facility or the proper discharge of the property, in case somebody comes back for some reason. So once the building's been built and is no longer actively being, those specifications are no longer being held, they should all be held locally for at least 7 years. And mortgages, again, should be held for 7 years once the discharge of the mortgage is complete. And we would recommend that these records, once that retention period is complete, be archived. That's of interest. So the kinds of things we focused on for these guidelines are the records of the monthly meeting, the clerk's correspondence, all the minutes, vital records, and other correspondence. And I heard that being mentioned this morning. What do we do with that correspondence? So obviously clerk's correspondence are things that, such as the clerk writes to public officials on behalf of the meeting, or is writing open letters on behalf of the meeting to other meetings. Letters of transfer would be included in that. And these are held locally for at least 3 years after the clerk, because these are often physical. So they're held locally. We're recommending for 3 years, and then to be archived. The other kinds of correspondence that we would recommend is holding locally for a period of time. We're suggesting 10 years, and then archived are, again, correspondence with public officials and other meetings, which are not the clerks specifically. Requests for membership, births, deaths, marriages, routine correspondence such as planning. There may be travel correspondence related to travel and travel ministry. And then based on the nature of the letters and specific to individuals in terms of confidentiality, these may want to be, you may want to restrict these from open research for other 20 to 40 years. So that's a judgment that has to be made kind of, there's no firm rule about that. The meeting has to have a sense of what the nature of the correspondence is, what the nature of the work is, and the individuals involved, and send it to the archives with those restrictions. The other thing I want to note here, because we weren't working on negatives, is what we don't recommend keeping for any length of time is all that correspondence which relates to logistics around matters. You know, whether it's in writing or in email, all of the, you know, back and forth about when we should do something specific, etc. That's truly ephemeral. Don't keep it. Yes, Marion.
I thought travel minutes should be, an official travel minute should be a permanent record,
Yes.
not just kept for a few years and thrown away.
None of those are to be thrown away. Those should be archived at the end of the tenure. It's really a question around how long you hold things locally.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then these are records that we're saying at the end, don't throw them away, archive them.
Okay.
The other class of documents that occur in meetings are bylaws and charters and handbooks. You may have checklists of how one clerk hands off to another clerk, or procedural documentation, the practice. And that's over and above minute books, which clearly are, but retaining these for institutional memory is really helpful. And again, they should be held locally for some period of time for local reference, or if they're rewritten, superseded, archive the old one, send it along to the archives. It's permanent record, but keep the newer version local. So approved, obviously, any approved minutes of monthly meeting or quarterly meeting business. And Marion, we should include in that travel minutes, memorial minutes, state of society reports. Travel minutes would also be included in that kind of category. Obviously, are records that you want to keep have a local copy for some period of time. We're suggesting 15 years, but they should be archived. In the final original copy should be archived every 2 to 5 years is our recommendation. Or you end up with boxes in the back that somebody sorts through in a few years' time. And I think I want to go back a little bit to this because one of the things this isn't addressing, minutes of monthly meetings should include the reports from any committee. So reports, et cetera, that come to that monthly meeting for consideration or quarterly meeting should be included as part of the minutes. And I know for some, if that makes that clearer to you. Okay. And then when we're talking about vital records, membership lists, records of weddings, births, and deaths, again, there should be some period in which they're held. Again, we recommend 7 years. Those then should again be archived. But once again, with the caveat that in these in particular, because of concerns around privacy and identity theft, they should be restricted from open research for 20 or 40 years. Our agreement with SCUA is that we have that option to either say yes, 20 years or yes, 40 years from the date of the document. And the kind of, we put travel minutes down with meeting life, but the other parts of meeting life, and these can be a wide range of things, are meeting histories, oral histories, newsletters, photos, slides, presentations, which are not monthly meeting, but you know, again, here's some more. We recommend having these archived as well. There is a request and a need to, if it's a spiritual journey or a presentation done by an individual member and the meeting wants to archive it, there should be a release form from the individual, either who was interviewed by the meeting or who created the material. There is a release form example up on the website so that the author, the individuals, knows that this material is going to an archive and may be openly researched in the future. Any questions about that? And also part of meeting life, there are things that meetings create. Example, we thought of in this category, and in our meeting, for example, we created a booklet on death and dying, which got us through memorial services and minutes. We would keep one permanently, but again, that would go to the archive, a copy of that. On photos and slides, again, release forms are important when there are photographs of children who are identified, and release forms from authors. If possible, photos should be captioned. This is a real, photos are one of those things that you really need to be thinking about all this when you have the first day school picnic and people are taking pictures and they bring them into the meeting, and you know, a decision needs to be made. Are we going to really keep them and put them up on our bulletin board? But you know, having the names and attached caption, capturing the event at which the picture was taken. Again, from a meeting point of view, you should keep those permanently, but, or you can archive those. Yes, Marion.
I was just with the New Hampshire Historical Society in archives issues, and they say that on all photographs, which I was not aware of, you put the name in pencil, not in ink.
Oh, good. I didn't realize that, but thank you.
A lot of
That's-
us didn't realize that.
That's helpful, yes. And this is really one of those areas, and it's also similar to like if you're having friends do presentations or give talks on spiritual life and you want to record those, or they get written up and you want to archive those at the time they're done. It's really important to capture that release form and to also capture with the record when the event took place, because that helps seed it in time. Okay. And then travel minutes. These should be archived through the issuing meeting. So along with meeting records. And again, this may be, given the nature of the travel and the ministry, may be something that people want to restrict to open research. And I keep saying that because it's very much a local decision, but it's an important decision, and it's an important decision that meeting archivists and library committees or whomever's doing this work sort of try to think through with their own meeting where the comfort levels are. Okay, these are records to keep and then destroy. Strong word, but it's always helpful to throw something out. So things like for 3 years, for the treasurers, you keep bank reconciliations, general kinds of correspondence. Maybe you're having correspondence with vendors, bank forms, employment applications if you happen to have them. If you keep inventory records such as AV equipment, you can get rid of those records after 3 years if the equipment has become inactive or are disposed of. And then they can be shredded or thrown out depending on what data is on the piece of paper. Whoop, I think I went too fast. This is an important one. This is really keep it for 7 years and then shred. And this is mostly financial. If you're meeting, some of these don't apply to many meetings because if you don't employ anyone, you don't need to worry about payroll records and employment records. But if you do have people you employ, this is and the 7 years is within the US, the tax, it's the auditable range. So that's when we're, you're expected to have records that long at least. But it's actually can be helpful to get rid of them at the end of 7 years. Any questions? Sarah.
I have a vague memory of reading somewhere that if you have a written retention policy that says you will destroy records after 3 years or 7 years, it's really important that you follow that.
Right. Yeah.
It has legal implications. Do
Yeah.
you know about that too?
I'm going to look at Betsy. Go ahead.
So, yeah, the way this comes up is if somebody demands some records from you and you say, we don't have those, and they say, why not? The question is, did you destroy them because you knew there was a lawsuit coming and you
Yeah.
destroyed documents that would be incriminating? Or did you destroy them because they were more than 7 years old and you have a policy in place that says you can get rid of your bank statements after 7 years?
Yeah.
In which case, you weren't trying to evade the legal system. I think those of us who watch the news can imagine why this might turn out to be important. The other issue that I wanted to just flag as one of those things that I don't think about often enough, and I realize I probably have a lot of things that need to be taken care of. Now that so much of our communication is done by email, including correspondence with other meetings, correspondence with meetings outside the United States that we're sending people to. What is the process for capturing documents that traveled by email? The document is presumably on your computer, but the cover letter is in your email inbox or your email sent box. And how does that get captured and archived? And I don't know the technical answer to that. But as a lawyer and as a researcher, if I find a document and I don't have a cover letter verifying that it was ever sent out, how do I know it was sent? And the cover letter is in somebody's email. So just a question.
Sarah?
Yeah, thanks. Can you share, I know the archivist is not here right now, but can you share just very briefly the process for submitting things to the archives?
Sure. So within your meeting, if you already have your materials all sorted and figured out, and there's sort of two processes. There's the paper one and the electronic one. For paper documents, you would go to our website that is under New England Yearly Meeting. You need if it's the very first submission that your meeting has done, you need to fill out and have the meeting clerk. We took you need to go through monthly meeting, I think, but you need the clerk to sign what's called a deed of gift, which outlines the copyright understanding between your meeting and SCUA, and that's probably the big part of that. You get that signed, then you also create and we have created a form, a listing of what all you're sending in. So it might say, Beacon Hill monthly meeting minutes, January 94 through February of 2005. It doesn't have to list every single document, but it really does need to list the breadth of what it is in every type and date ranges. Also on that document, let's say you have included, let's take ministry and council minutes as well. That's a separate line. Your meeting has decided that those are always going to be held closed to open research for 40 years. Not the meeting minutes, because they're really public documents, but the ministry and council minutes. And you would have that as a separate line, and you would note that those we're going to carry a restriction, a research restriction. So that's what the meeting does. If you have questions about some of this stuff and what should go and what's just financial and that is not really wanted in an overall policy statement, you can always contact Tamara, who will work with you on that. Then you can either drive them to SCUA, contact SCUA, let them know you're coming, drive out to the archive, or you can ship them. They will give you an acknowledgement that they have received the boxes. If you're doing that and you haven't had to interact much with Tamara, it's highly recommended that you contact her and let her know you're doing that, because she will help keep track to make sure that they landed and everything's going to be processed. Okay. For electronic documents, you work with, you contact Tamara, and she works with Danielle Kovacs at SCUA to set up a shared Google Drive just for you and SCUA. And you load your records to that drive and they pull them off and let you know that they've got them. And then usually it can take up to 6 months before you will actually see all your records in the finding list at SCUA, because it can take a while for the archivist there to process the material that you've sent. Is that high level? Is that a good outline for you?
Yeah, that's super helpful. Thank you.
We try to make it not too hard. What, by the way, once you've done the one deed of gift, you don't need a second deed of gift. Your meeting has established that deed of gift with SCUA, and thereafter what you just need is that listing of what you are including in the next deposit to the archives. Mary. Oh, Mary.
Sorry, I didn't want to cut off if there was a follow-up from the previous question.
Okay.
I was just saying thank you.
Oh, okay. My question is a follow-up on Betsy Kasdan's previous comment that I am intermittently part of Puente, and I'm also part of a monthly meeting that is part of a sister relationship. A lot of our correspondence with Cuban friends goes either through Facebook Messenger or through WhatsApp. And some of those are very voluminous groups, which are largely Cuban friends sending memes or sending prayer requests, things like that, much of which are not anybody's business, but there is some more substantial matter that passes through those groups.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering what, if any, responsibility one would have for tracking that and perhaps archiving the substantial parts.
Great question, Mary. And we actually haven't ever, as a committee, really even thought about it. So I think it would be wonderful to hear other people's thoughts on that, right? Because you know, you're not going to see it in our policy or our retention policies at this point, much like Betsy's. And I'm going to put in a plug for the committee at this point, because this is the kind of thing the committee gets to talk about and think about and try to come up with good advice. And it can be interesting conversation and worthwhile work. And it's ever evolving. This is not a done once and then you don't need to go back and look at it again. Sarah, did you have a question?
No, I had a suggestion about transferring documents by electronic means. One of the committees I work with deals almost completely just in email. And so when they transmit things, I print the email to PDF and keep that.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if you're sending with WhatsApp or Messenger or whatever, if taking a screenshot of the transmission is at least some kind of record.
Yeah, good thought. Good thought. Mark?
As we've seen recently in the news, almost everything, I would say you should be regarded as being open and available. Nothing is secret, and you shouldn't assume it's secret. We've had over the years, we've had a fair amount of controversy about privacy and secrecy in our meeting. As soon as I set up the website, I asked the committee I asked our meeting to agree a privacy policy, more or less based on the one we used in the UK, which is, I mean, at the time we were still in the European Union and had to follow EU rules. And their rules about privacy are more thoughtful than they are here. So don't assume anything that you have kept electronically or sent electronically is hidden and unavailable. And we see how easy that is just in this last week. The other thing is that you don't have to make it easy for people to find out telephone numbers and email addresses and last names. So you can do take a certain amount of effort when you create the document to obscure it a little bit, and just make it harder for it to be stripped from the website or from an email or whatever. I do take seriously Betsy's point about having traceability for certain documents, and that's a tough one. I don't know quite how to do that. I understand the cover letter idea, and it's something I'd never really thought of. But I'll leave it at that for the time being.
Are there other questions? So I'm going to recommend that I'm going to take a quick look in chat here before
Carol, I think Katie Bond has her hand up.
Oh, okay. Kitty?
Hi, this sort of goes along with the previous speaker's point. And I don't mean this to be a joke given what's happened over the last week, but one of our sort of ad hoc committees is considering using Signal for certain reasons. How do we capture that somehow? Do we take a screenshot? How is it necessary to preserve that?
I'm struggling a little bit. I think first of all, it gets to the nature of what it is, but it's also dependent on the nature of the material, such that if it's something that really pertains to the heart of the meeting business, and should be part of the meeting record of its business, then you would want somehow to capture and preserve that. And that's a general answer. It's hard to answer that without specifics, I guess. Mary, do you have a comment?
I do actually. A non-Quaker group that I work with has also transitioned a lot of its group talk to Signal. I think it should be treated exactly the same way as anything that the Archives Committee should decide about Messenger, or about WhatsApp. Fundamentally, it works the same way as those do, except it's slightly more secure.
Mark?
Well, basically the attitude or the approach that I've used on our website is it's the value of transparency that most Quakers have. And how I believe transparency is very important in times like these, or with certain governments. There could be a cost to being transparent. And that I don't have an easy answer, or maybe even I don't even have a good answer. We're going to stay, I hope, as transparent as possible. The understanding that if we are completely transparent, there is a risk to someone's freedom in some places. And I don't know quite how we balance that. But you do have to, it's very important ethical consideration.
Betsy, did you want to comment? Or
Yeah, I just, to me, there's a difference between truth-telling and transparency. And I will say, having spent a lot of time on reading old Quaker minutes, they are incredibly opaque. They are deliberately opaque to protect the reputation of Friends. And it's annoying as all get out as a researcher, because you get people disowned and you can't figure out what they actually did that got them disowned. Old minutes are incredibly opaque about what was really going on. We tend to put all the detail in the minutes. I cannot convince my meeting that the ministry and council minutes that are public, that are available to way more people than just members of ministry and council, need to have way less detail. Everybody's like, no, we need all the details so we know, so 10 years from now, we know what happened. But there's always been a balancing of truth-telling and care for others. And I think as we've moved to electronic records, that's even more true. And I think we're just not thinking carefully about the difference between need to know and everything transparent to everybody. There's plenty of stuff in my life that I might choose to tell one friend, but I definitely don't want out on the internet. Even if it was part of a clearness committee meeting, or even if it was part of, so I really encourage friends to think about whether transparency is a Quaker value or whether we've adopted that from outside.
So thank you, Betsy. I want to just note as clerk of that committee that this is a topic that's clearly, last time digital records were something that we weren't as deep in, and we've gotten much deeper into that. But this whole question about the sort of capturing email and what's in IM or Signal, et cetera, is something that we will take back to the committee for consideration in the future. I just want to capture and note that that's one of the real values to the committee of this workshops like these, because it helps elevate things that we have not yet really addressed as a group. And then Leslie, you have your hand up.
Well, I was about to say, Betsy,
Oh,
Betsy addressed it. That friend speaks my mind. I do think that the issue of communication and all the different avenues we now have available to communicate within a meeting is a secondary but related issue that I'm trying to keep separate as I listen to this discussion, because our meeting is wrestling with things on the web page, things through a newsletter, things that are hybrid. And I think that all flows into this issue of what we share, what we protect, and how we record our outcomes and our decision making.
thank you. Thank you. Are there other questions? I would like to have Tamara introduce herself. I'm going to stop sharing, screen sharing. Tamara has joined us, and if she can just say a few words so everybody, I would appreciate it.
Sure. Here, I'll turn my camera on so you can see I'm a real life person. I joined you way back. Carol, you did a fantastic job with the slides. So I didn't want to interrupt. You presented everything that I would have presented. So I think everybody got a good overview of what the committee had worked on. And in terms of the question about how to actually transfer the records, just reach out to me. I check my email every day, and I'm happy to help you with any of those steps. Basically, the deed of gift is a legal document between you and SCUA, or your meeting in SCUA. And as Carol said, subsequent gifts only require what we're calling a transfer letter, which both of those forms are on that link that was in the slides. But I can send it to you. You can look for it. Whatever's easier for you. I've worked with Holly. It was nice to see your face a year ago. Yeah, whatever you need, I'm here for you.